other thing I want to talk about was this concept of always feeling unlucky. So mental game of poker, bro, right? This kind of goes hand in hand with entitlement tilt, injustice tilt, fairness, like all that stuff. This might help you, okay? This really helped me with a bunch of different ways of tilting. And basically, this concept was brought up within the book of the mental game of poker to discuss injustice tilt, where people feel like things are unfair. You know, the author talks about like, how do you figure out if something is fair, like within a game? You know, like let's say your match, your Counter-Strike match. How do you figure out something is fair? There's like 3 different piles, and I turned it into like almost 6 different piles. There's like 3 major piles, and they're like split into 2 different things, right? You have 3 major piles, right? You have skill, you have mistakes, right? And then you have variance in these 3 piles. And then this is just split off into you and then opponent for all of these. So it's kind of like 6 different piles. You have the skill of you, the skill of your opponent, the mistakes that you make, the mistakes of your opponent, the variance that benefits you, and the variance that benefits your opponent. And I wanted to bring this up because he talks about this for fairness, but this also goes into luckiness, like feeling super unlucky, feeling entitled to wins, feel like inflated egos. This all goes hand in hand with this concept. Fuck, this is blocked by my webcam. So those are the 6 piles, okay? So skill is just like if you do something smart, you did something smart, or if the opponent did something smart, that's just the skill pile. Mistakes, you know, people, pretty self-explanatory if you make a mistake or if your opponent makes a mistake. And then variance is randomness. There is randomness within this game. Sometimes you get lucky timings, sometimes your opponent get lucky timings, sometimes you get unlucky timings. There's just variance. Basically what the guy in the book was talking about is that you can lose games and like not have that injustice tilt of feeling that things were unfair if you can correctly sort instances within a match into each of these 6 piles accurately. An instance would be like you making a play, your opponent making a play, variance happens, just being able to sort out what happened within a game into each correct pile. So let's say you peek long on overpass and get 2 kills. You know, you might assort this into as you making a skillful play. An accurate assortment might be your opponent making a mistake. Your opponent made a mistake, that's why you got those 2 kills. Basically what happens is if you always feel like things are unjust, it's likely because you're not accurately putting instances into the correct piles. Let's say every time your opponent makes a mistake, you write it off as it was your skill, right? You write it off as your skill. Or every time variance happens too, right? Variance that happens to help you out, you write it off as your skill. Then also you write off your skills as your skill. So you see how this pile is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then every time that your opponent does something skillful, you don't put it in his pile of opponent skill. You put it as in variance. The enemy team got lucky. Every time you make a mistake, you write it off as variance. The opponent got lucky again. So you see how like inaccurate assortment of these piles makes your brain think that you're really skillful and that the opponents are always lucky. Accurately, you know, there should be more under your opponent's skill, more under mistakes that you're making, they're making. But inaccurately assorting these piles of instances within the game into the incorrect like pile makes you have a unrealistic perception on what is happening within the game. And you end up with these giant piles of you having high skill, right? These giant piles, and your opponent's always getting lucky. And you end up with this mindset like, wow, bro, everyone I play is always so fucking lucky. I never get lucky. And the reason why you never get lucky is because when you do get lucky, you put it off, you write off as if you were skillful. And every time your opponent makes a skillful play, you just write off as if he's lucky versus putting off as that was a smart play. You see what I'm saying? Other weird perceptions can come up through this as well. An example would be always writing off things happening as you making mistakes, right? This is a weird one where you always just think that every time you lose a round, it's your fault. Sometimes it is your fault, so right, add it to the mistake pile, you made a mistake. Sometimes your opponent did something skillful, right? But this person will write off in their head as if, oh, I made a mistake. Sometimes your opponent did something lucky, they got lucky, it should be over here, but this person will write off as, oh, I made a mistake. And they're not correctly putting these instances in the correct pile, so they're always feeling like, I'm always making mistakes, I'm such a bad player, I'm always making mistakes. And you can see how just inaccurate assortments, this can be mixed matched in any way possible. where you always feel skillful, you always feel like your opponents are skillful based on weird perceptions. But just being able to accurately assort instances into each pile correctly will get you a very realistic perception on the game and what's happening, and get rid of a lot of these weird tilting problems of feeling unjust, feeling that things are unfair, feeling that you're never lucky, feeling that your opponents are always lucky. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point, but yeah, just this is a skill you can work on. The skill of being able to say what actually happened and write off what actually happened. And what the guy says in the book is that do this going forward, but what you can do right now, if you don't have anything that you can think of, go back into previous instances that you've written off before in the past as luck, skill, yada yada yada, and try and see if that was accurate, and reframe them in your mind, and that will help you go forward and have the correct mindset on what things actually are. This is a skill that you can develop of accurately assorting each pile, these 6 piles. And if you want to get into it, there's probably other, damn, this looks like a bunch of dicks. If you want, there's probably other piles too of like teammate stuff. Like you got teammates, communication, there's other things. But I think these 3 piles covers pretty much all of it.